A steady flow of traffic as motorists headed north for a 3-day break. And a strong warning from police who've increased their presence as part of the annual Operation Stay Alert.
Just don't, basically. That's all it comes down to. Just plan your trips ahead. That's all we're trying to encourage. Stick to the speed limits. Make sure you take regular breaks so that we can fight the fatigue factor.
They're cracking down on drug driving, particularly in light of a report showing an increase in amphetamine possession in the Hunter Valley, excluding Newcastle, of an alarming 132.4%.
So we do random testing, is what we're saying nowadays, so that incorporates both. And we are getting some positive tests because we've got the mobile bus that you can see behind us now, the RBT2. So it's fitted with both a breath analysis as well as the Dragar system for drug testing as well.
It's hoped the Hunter will be fatality-free throughout the operation following a horrific month on the roads. 9 people lost their lives in separate crashes. The most recent saw 23-year-old mother of 2 Jasmine O'Sullivan killed in a 4-car crash on John Renshaw Drive on May 21. Double demerits will be in place until midnight Monday. Lauren Kelly, NBN News. Hundreds of motorbikes for sale online across the Hunter, but many are unaware of the dangers of private sales. Those trying to sell their bikes are being warned to use common sense when dealing with prospective buyers by asking questions and checking ID.
Take a photo of their licence. It's unlikely that someone that you've got a perfect photo of their head is going to suddenly take off with your motorcycle.
It comes after a man was charged with the theft of 5 bikes in the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie areas between April 29 and May 12 this year. It's believed he was taking the vehicles, which were for sale, for a test drive. While his case is still before the courts, salesman Graham Boyd is pushing for tougher punishment for those who get caught breaking the law.
For stealing somebody's motorcycle, they start locking them up, they'll slow down on doing it.
Lauren Kelly, NBN News.
So I just felt compelled to go out with other like-minded people and to call on the government to urgently do something to save women's lives.
It's enormous. There's no resemblance at all. We started with, as a matter of fact, when we came to Lochinvar, we started with a tent. So it's that far advanced.
When Greg Pugh was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis back in 2008, he feared a future limited by his disease. This week, the Stockton man, who already has the Sydney to Hobart race to his credit, returned from a 7-week voyage aboard the MS flagship Oceans of Hope.
Unbelievable. Everything from hardly any wind, 40-degree days, swimming in the ocean, to 50-knot winds and 8-metre swells. It had it all.
The 67-foot yacht is halfway through a 33,000 nautical miles circumnavigation aimed at changing perceptions about MS.
Even if you do have a disease or a disability, if you put your wits to it and you put your mind to it, there are actually ways around most things.
When a patient will be diagnosed with MS, what I tell them is that my aim is that they live a normal life and enjoy it to the full, and this is what it is.
For Greg, it's been a life-changing experience.
The message is that you're not dead. You can still do marvellous things and have a full life.
Interestingly, the outdoor lifestyle sailing encourages fits with research at HMRI about the benefits of vitamin D, which comes naturally from the sun, in treating MS.
Helping not only your bone structure but also reducing this pro-inflammatory status that MS patients have. MS is an inflammatory disease of your brain, and you want to reduce these inflammatory markers, which you can do with vitamin D.
Researchers are currently recruiting for a trial where newly diagnosed patients will first be prescribed supplements.
They will be closely followed up, and should they develop further symptoms, then we suggest other treatment options, of which we know that they're effective and that they keep the disease under control. But if we could manage with just raising the vitamin D level, that would be fantastic.
Meanwhile, Oceans of Hope set sail for Brisbane today on the next leg of its incredible voyage.
We're not curing the disease, we're not curing illnesses, but we are hopefully inspiring people to find a way to accept that and then use any opportunity to express their own true identity, not as the sick person, but as the real person inside.
Greg Pugh has discovered a future he once thought out of reach. At 49, with partner Susan at his side, anything seems possible.
A lot more confident. I hardly think of my illness these days. It totally changed me.
He's only just finding his land legs, but the ocean keeps calling.
Next I'm going to cuddle my children and see whether they'll let me go sailing in the Sydney to Hobart again this year.
Desperate to stay in touch with the top four, Rosebuds produced their best performance of the season last week.
I always say to the boys, it doesn't matter how you win, as long as you win. And to go out with a performance like that, play well solidly for 90 minutes, and obviously the clean sheet was the added bonus.
The Graham Law coach side has struggled for consistency so far this season, but showed enough signs against the Gunners that a strong second half of the season is ahead. Tomorrow they take on the Jets Youth, who are one place above them on the NPL ladder. And the Red and Greens have a game plan set for their opponent's possession-based style of play.
We've got to be patient, let them have the ball, play in front of us, and if they're playing in front of us, they can't really hurt us. So be patient, pick our times to go and press, and as I said, hopefully get a result.
Kenneth is a former Scottish international and has been happy with his performances.
Yeah, I mean, it was a slow start, but personally I feel like I'm getting fitter, stronger. I'm getting my sharpness back, and I think that showed last week. But yeah, overall I'm happy with performances, yeah.
In other matches, Maitland take on Hamilton, Magic are away to the Blues, Edgeworth play the Bears, and South Cardiff host the Jaffers. Michael Kane, NBN News.
Yeah, well, obviously we've got some injuries there at the moment, and I always knew that would be my role during the year. If there's some injuries in the halves, then I'd push into that position. Yeah, we had a really good session this morning. That's the first time I've trained with Carlos in the halves, and I thought he held his own last week. So great to work with him there, and looking forward to playing. I've got to spring him a step after unfortunately missing last week, but yeah, excited about playing tomorrow.
Yeah, we've beaten them there the last 2 years, which has been good, but that's really going to count for nothing this weekend. If we come out and play well and do what we want, complete our sets, I certainly think that we'll give them a fair run for their money. We're still of the belief that after getting a win last week, we've got a bit of momentum behind us, and we've seen that with a lot of teams, that if they can get a couple of wins in a row, they're certainly the talk of the town. So I'm not saying that that's where we will be after this weekend, but we're just trying to build and do what we can each week.
The state government need to put their money where their mouth is in terms of cultural funding and not just hoard it all for Sydney. It must be spent in major regional areas like Newcastle.
Gone but not forgotten. The special ceremony by the Newcastle Merchant Navy Memorial Committee shining a light on those lost at sea.
Given that the casualties during World War II and the valiant role that was played by merchant mariners in the defence of Australia, this function here evidences those roots in the community.
The committee says the contribution of the mariners is mostly unknown due to censorship at the time.
It was all secret, coverage was censored, names and places not disclosed.
While the ceremony remembered all men and women lost at sea during war times, Newcastle's marine efforts were also highlighted, with the Steel City a major hub for shipbuilding and repairs, as well as a place where fatalities at sea were deeply felt. With no grave to visit, friends and family mourned loved ones with wreaths. This year's Anzac Centenary prompting the remembrance of a special vessel.
The 22nd of May 1915, a ship called the Pakara. It took troops and horses from Newcastle to Egypt and then on to Gallipoli, so it has a major interest in that.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
A street parade with a difference. 300 sheep, many with little red booties, making their way down Merrywar's main street for the traditional running of the sheep. Thousands filled the sidelines to catch a glimpse, the event marking the start of the town's biggest celebration of all things wool, the Festival of the Fleeces.
The importance still of the woolen fibre and its qualities to not only the general public but also, of course, to our economy here in Merrywar.
What do you like most about coming back every year?
Just to watch the sheep go down the main street.
It's just such a lovely day, and the atmosphere and all the people. Beautiful.
The parade continued with local students, as well as a procession of vintage cars and machinery. There were even a few familiar faces tagging along. From big dog to dog high jump, one of the festival's highlights. Those big and small gave it a go, but not all found the jump enticing. In the end, it was Jack who won, jumping a staggering 2.25 metres.
Along with all the usual attractions, there's also a few surprises this year to celebrate the festival's 25th anniversary.
For the first time, this eyebrow-raising contest was included, a novelty event popular with the youngsters.
It's actually jelly bean, propelling a jelly bean through the air.
Today's mood, one of enthusiasm and hope, a feeling shared by those within the wool industry.
We're looking fantastic. The price of wool is up, so there's a lot of positivity around, and that's what we want.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
The Greens were looking to take advantage of their home ground. But it was the students that were keen to play running rugby early. And they were making inroads down Merryweather's left-hand side of the park. The very next phase, they were rewarded for their efforts. Halfback Michael Handley adding the extras from the sideline. The visitors' dominance continued, this time through Darcy Barker. An infringement in the ruck leading to more points. University leading into the break 17-0, with the Greens having it all to do in the second half. Keen to get back on the front foot, Greens prop Jared Butler was leading from the front. Some good work at the base of the scrum saw an overlap finished off by Luke Tuvey. Merryweather were hitting its straps, but big chances went begging as an inside ball was all that was needed. This piece of brilliance from Jack Nixon blowing the score out once again to favour the students. A late try for the home side wasn't enough as University won its fourth match of the season, 24 points to 12. In other matches, Wanderers defeated Lake Macquarie, the Hawks kept their undefeated season intact against Southern Beaches, the Waratahs were too good for the Gropers, and Maitland defeated Singleton. Michael Kane, NBN News. The Hunters Westpac Helicopter Service fine-tuning new water rescue skills.
All the numbers stacking up against us, we're going to train for the worst possible scenario.
The recent three-day exercise off Newcastle beaches placed paramedics on the front line more than ever before.
We had capability before of putting ambulance officers in the water. They were a little bit limited, but now the ambulance paramedics are fully capable in the water, so we can actually get them onto small vessels in quite large swells.
The service responds to many sea-based scenarios, many of them life-threatening.
It might be a person with his hand caught in a winch out at sea or someone injured on a sailing vessel. It just gives us that capability of extending the treatment or extending the helicopter services capabilities and getting medics to the patient ASAP.
This exercise made as close to the real thing as possible.
They're doing very well. You know, a couple of them had their hearts in their mouths at one stage there, and we have to work in the very worst conditions because they're the conditions that we're going to go out in. You can do it in the lake, but realistically, we're not going to get those sort of jobs in the lake. We're to get them in offshore because we have to do it safely. And at the end of the day, we've all got to come home. So training makes perfect.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
It's a welcome sound on wine country roads. Tourists in the valley and in numbers.
Yeah, look, having a really busy weekend, which is great, and the sun's out and everyone's here wining and dining and enjoying themselves. It's great.
The June long weekend is always one of the hunter wine industry's busiest periods, but this year it's especially timely.
People get a perception that that was declared a disaster zone, the Hunter Valley, and that tends to be a perception that washes across the whole place. And reality was that we were shut for a day or so.
Today, many of the region's wineries were full of customers and a familiar sound. At First Creek Wines, Jim Smith has spent the weekend introducing people to the basics. He believes that first-timer market holds plenty of potential.
And that's what we deal with every day and every weekend is people who haven't been here before. And it's great for guys from Sydney now. You come up in a couple of hours on the freeway and you're in the middle of this beautiful country.
As the numbers continue to grow, the region's Wine Tourism Association says it's also changing. The average age of visitors is clearly getting younger, a positive for the industry moving forward.
It's about the stories and people trying to understand what they're putting in their mouths, whether it's wine or food. Wine has got so much attached to it in terms of its stories, and I think that's gelling with young people these days.
Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
Used in the making of steel, carting hot metals and slag and various other steel products.
It's a chance for us artists, independent artists, to get out there, play our original music, and also get to see and support the people that we grew up listening to and artists that we really look up to.
They started the season with 4 straight wins, but the Knights have now lost 8 of their last 9. Assessing yesterday's loss to the Raiders, Andrew Johns labelled the Knights' defence hopeless, also saying a host of players have become too comfortable.
But it doesn't matter who you are, you get out there, especially when you're playing at home, that's Newcastle's bread and butter. You put your body on the line and you have a go, and I got to say, I don't know if some of those players could look at themselves in the mirror and think, I gave my all today.
On the injury front, Jack Stockwell will have scans on a potentially serious biceps injury, while David Farlongo has a hamstring strain. The skipper, meantime, refused to use the absence of key players as an excuse.
We let our fans down, we let ourselves down today for sure. To come out and start the game, for our coach to see, we'll say we're lethargic starting the game at home, that's a fairly big disappointment.
In positive news, Kiwi international Jeremy Smith has signed a 1-year contract extension. The Rosellas looked dangerous early. Jade Porter and Steve Gordon almost combined for the opener. But it was a second rower who would post first points as Peter Mannion twisted and turned his way to a try. Coming off their first win this season, the Butcher Boys lacked polish. The Rosellas were having troubles of their own, but the defending champions still had enough weapons to make Central pay as Porter waltzed through a big gap. Another Butcher Boys mistake handed West's possession, and a few plays later, Matt Herman made it 16-0 shortly before the break. The second half was more of the same. Wests extended their lead through Simon Williams. When Warren Shillings found a way through, the Rosellas were in front 24-0. Last week, Central held Curry scoreless. This week, it was the Butcher Boys' turn as Wests won comfortably. Despite losing key players Cale Bradbury and Chris Berlin to injury, the visiting Magic was still on top in the first half. In a scrappy opening 45, the referee handed out several yellow cards. Broadmeadow went agonisingly close to opening the scoring through Peter Haynes. The major talking point came shortly before half-time. The Blues were incensed when Matt Tull was judged to have given away a penalty. Following some push and shove, Haynes stepped up to take the spot kick. In an ironic twist, the Blues received a dubious penalty of their own as Michael Finlayson brought down Daniel Bird. Ben Hughes stepped up to put Charlestown City in front. That took the wind out of Broadmeadow's sails. The Magic men spent the rest of the half trying to level the score, but time after time their efforts were well off target. The 1-0 win breathing new life into the season for the Blues.
From the air, you can see the true scale of the destruction. The house, its contents, and 4 cars destroyed. It looks like a bomb site, but for the D9 bulldozer in the thick of it. Police allege a 48-year-old man from Bullaroo stole it from the nearby mine and drove it to the house via a bush trail before ploughing the machine straight through the property, crushing everything in its path. On the ground, confusion and despair was all that remained as friends and family of the occupants arrived to survey the devastation.
I was shocked. I was just absolutely shocked to see how much damage it was done.
56-year-old Deborah Kerr and her 2 daughters, aged 15 and 20, had been asleep inside the rental home. Her partner was away at the time.
They're all in shock. I'm just grateful that we're alive.
She'd heard a commotion and looked out her window.
And that's when he picked the bucket up and started to go for the house, and we just run straight out the front door.
This is what the house looked like until 7:10 this morning. Now a family is attempting to salvage what little it has left, and a community is rattled.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I'm in shock, total shock.
A neighbour said he woke to the sound of the bulldozer crushing the cars. He said he was terrified and he immediately called police. He then helped Deborah and her daughters while the driver allegedly focused on a 29-year-old man, her nephew, who'd been asleep in the garage.
The driver of the bulldozer has then driven the bulldozer at him and chased him around the backyard. The male jumped the back fence into a paddock and escaped.
2 police officers will be recommended for bravery awards after climbing onto the bulldozer and making the arrest.
They've smashed the window of the bulldozer, delivered OC spray into the cabin and switched off the bulldozer.
Police allege the arrested man used to live with the family. He's due to face court tomorrow on a string of charges.
You would think in 27 years of policing that you've seen it all until you attend a job like this one today.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. He's ridden more winners than any jockey in Australian history, over 4,200 of them. But for Robert Thompson, today saw one of his proudest achievements, an AM for his significant service to the thoroughbred racing industry that all began when he was just 14 years old as an apprentice to his grandfather.
I was more or less born at the stables, or in the saddle as you like. I only ever had one job since I left school, but I still love it.
These days, as well as still racing, the 57-year-old enjoys mentoring young jockeys and lecturing at the apprentice school. He says there's been plenty of hard yakka, but just as many good memories.
Dad and I, we won 5 races here at Cessnock one day, including the Cessnock Cup. So to ride 5 winners for my father was it was absolutely wonderful.
From one familiar face to another, John Kilpatrick, a former mayor of Lake Macquarie, has been awarded an AM for his community and local government work in the region.
I've always thought that most of these things are team things. I've been lucky. I've had a lot of good and caring people around me, and if you've got those sort of people, you can make a lot of things happen.
For more than 30 years, he's held leadership positions with Samaritans, Anglicare and Meals on Wheels.
You get a lot of thrill out of seeing things happen to make life a bit better for people.
Another man who's been making a sizable difference, OAM recipient John Young, better known as Big John. For 37 years, he's been running the Children's Toy Run. Last year, $97,000 was raised for the Salvation Army.
There's a lot of kids out there that do without, and we're lucky enough to be able to do something about it.
All up, 4 people in the Hunter became members of the Order of Australia, while 14 people received an Order of Australia medal. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
We think it's probably incumbent upon us to make sure that if these vessels go back, and they're going to go back into service, they should go back into service in a fit and proper state.
We've got photos of the one that was found on Ash Island on the morning of the attack that the story goes was turned into kids' knickers and things like that because of the silk. For one of these to show up 70 odd years later is just absolutely incredible.
My great-grandfather found it on the night of the shelling, and back in '42. Put it in his shed, and it's just been passed through the family, and no one really realised the value.
We've spent, I think, 11 days in Vancouver prior to coming to Winnipeg, and we've had nothing but great support from the Canadians. So whether or not they want to jump on board Team Australia is up to them. But like Staj said, obviously we're going out to do a job to get 3 points.
Coming off 4 losses in 5 games, the North Stars needed to make a statement against the Mustangs, but the visitors took an early lead. Newcastle came to life when the teams returned to the ice as Geordie Woodrick levelled the score. Then it was Luke Moffat's time to shine. The American import put the North Stars in front. His second handed the home side a healthy buffer. Brian Bales added a fourth for Newcastle in the final period to secure the win. Merryweather's Philippa Anderson has finished 7th in the women's division at the World Surfing Games in Central America. The Australian team ended up in 3rd in the Aloha Cup and 5th overall. Still on the water, and Lake Macquarie sailor Chris Nicholson is back in action in the Volvo Ocean Race, with the recently rebuilt Team Vestas Wind yacht finishing 7th at the in-port event in Lisbon. There's better news as we go to air, with Nicholson and his crew holding a narrow lead on leg 8 from Portugal to Lorient in western France.
We felt pretty nice and comfortable in the open water, and we literally just chipped our way through the fleet. It was some really nice boat handling by the guys, and we played the coast pretty right.
It's an incident that's made national headlines. A house, a family's belongings and 4 cars pulverised by a bulldozer. Police allege Bullaroo man Jamie Francis Sager stole the 48-tonne bulldozer from Macquarie Coal Preparation Plant and drove it to the Terralba property. This morning, family members were attempting to recover what little is left after being overwhelmed by support from the community.
I've had so many people coming down and offering us a house and clothes and everything. Yeah, that part's been wonderful. I don't even know how I'm going to thank them all. I don't even know where to start.
Jamie Sager, who once lived with the family, has been charged with 17 offences. He remained silent as he appeared in Newcastle local court this morning. His solicitor Matthew Unwin made an application for a mental health assessment, which was granted.
Concerned about his mental health?
Well, it's one in which I indicated to the court that he's been previously diagnosed, but I can't give any further information in regards to that.
Mr Unwin told Magistrate Ian Cheetham that he was not instructed to make a bail application, adding that there are a number of mental health issues. Sager's charge sheet is lengthy, contravening an AVO, stealing the bulldozer, possessing a knife and intentionally destroying 4 cars, an aluminium boat and a much-loved home.
I've been here 15 years this Christmas.
But the most serious accusation, destroying property with the intention to endanger the lives of Deborah Kerr and 2 others. Sager's bail was formally refused today. He's due back in court on August 5. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
There are some very steep cliffs. The drop here is approximately 145 metres. That's why we have the accredited search teams conducting those searches.
Pain and anguish all over their faces. The parents of missing Lake Macquarie woman Carly McBride want answers from whoever took their daughter away.
I pray every day that they break, or somebody that knows them breaks and comes forward. That's what I pray every day for.
31-year-old Carly, a mother of two, was last seen on September 30 on Calgaroo Avenue at Muswellbrook after visiting her ex-partner's home.
Many of my own attempts to gain information have so far fallen flat, and we just hope that after today especially, someone may remember something.
Several searches have already taken place in bushland in the area, and more lines of inquiry are being pursued. But police have no doubt she met with foul play.
We will continue on Strike Force Karabi until we get a resolution on this matter. Our dedication to it will be unwavering.
Police say they now have a plethora of information regarding Carly McBride's disappearance, but they're still chasing that breakthrough moment to find out what happened on September 30.
We are of the belief that there is somebody in the community who will have information that is pertinent to this inquiry.
In the meantime, Carly's parents will wait and hope, not just for themselves, but for her children.
Please, anyone who has anything, big or just smallest thing, please come forward and help us and help her children, please. From the bottom of my heart and my family's heart. We're still in the dark and we need your help.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
This operation is in direct response to the number of fatalities on Hunter Road since April. We've had 10 fatalities in that period.
It was all guns blazing for Australia's second longest serving Prime Minister today. John Howard was once again holding the floor, addressing the Newcastle Business Lunch and keen to talk about free trade with China and its benefits for the hunter.
China is very important to Australia, but it's particularly important to the second largest coal port in the world.
He believes, with respect to doing business with China, the region can learn from Newcastle's track record of diversification.
I was Prime Minister during the time where it went through a lot of challenges with the winding down of the steel industry and the ultimate closure of it, and the emergence of a transformed Newcastle, not ashamed in any way of its past, very proud of it, but nonetheless a transformed Newcastle.
Annie Jung is a business consultant on Chinese trade in the hunter. She would like to see more promotion.
I think Newcastle business need promotion themselves more, and let more and more Chinese people know about Hunter region and know about their business.
Meanwhile, with the issue of same-sex marriage prominent in Australian politics, Mr Howard doesn't want change.
Well, I'm in favour of the status quo, the present legislation. Anything that weakens the centrality of traditional marriage is not a good thing for society.
You think a referendum may be in order?
No, I don't think a referendum is needed. I think this is something where individual members of Parliament should stand up and say what they think.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Millie Van Egmond will be very impressed. For the cutback is useful, and here's a chance. Van Egmond! Oh, against the crossbar. What a save from Hope.
What a fantastic shot, and hit the crossbar.
Winning penalty in the 2010 Asian Cup final. A long-range shot. Van Egmond. She's saying, what do I need to do to get past the US goalkeeper?
She's the world's best, and she's shown that.
Onto the crossbar by Hope Solo. Takes the corner back post. That's flicked back.
Matilda's being nice and patient, just bringing the ball out, not forcing.
With the FFA taking over the Newcastle Jets, players under contract were free to test their value on the open market. This afternoon, 12 A-League squad members agreed to remain in the Hunter, a list which includes Nigel Bogard, David Carney, Ben Kennedy and Ben Kantarovski. Youth League striker Brandon Lundy has also told the club he's keen to stay, with a new deal reportedly close to being finalised. But it's not all good news. The Jets have confirmed 26-year-old defender Scott Neville and 23-year-old Newcastle-bred midfielder Jacob Pepper have signed for a rival club. Western Sydney has announced the signing of Neville on a deal which will last until the end of the 2016-2017 season. The Wanderers are also expected to confirm Pepper's signing as early as tomorrow. Meanwhile, there's no news yet on the future of on-loan keeper Mark Birighitti. Jason Doyle drew the inside gate for Heat 1 as he got Australia's campaign underway. America's Greg Hancock made a great start, and despite Doyle's best efforts, the boy from Belmont was forced to settle for second. Former world champion Chris Holder was playing his part, giving the Aussies a handy lead after Heats 3 and 5. Doyle re-emerged for Heat 7 and was quickly into top spot. He held on to claim the win, pushing Team Australia further in front. But the battle with Great Britain would continue until the dying stages, Nick Morris showing plenty of desperation. Despite more drama, Doyle came back to win Heat 12 as well before saving his best for last. In Heat 19, the defending Australian champion finally put the result beyond doubt. As the Aussies advance to the World Cup final in Denmark.
Emergency services returned to the Watagan Mountains for a third day, looking for Tinamba teenager Jay Fowler, but the search ended before it had barely begun.
Well, as you can appreciate, today's been a difficult day for the family, which what we sort of imagined was going to be a happy weekend has ended up in a tragedy as a result of finding Jay's body today.
Friends and family had raised the alarm on Monday morning after Jay failed to return from a walk at McLean's Lookout.
He was up with a group of family and friends, just camping for the night. His mum and dad stayed with him till late in the evening, and they woke up in the morning, started cooking a meal, and he went for a walk a short distance away.
A full-scale search involving police, SES, the Volunteer Rescue Association and Rural Fire Service began immediately. Police made the discovery at around 9 o'clock this morning here near McLean's Lookout. It's believed he suffered fatal injuries after falling 90 metres. Polaire was then tasked with retrieving his body, a difficult operation due to weather conditions and the dense terrain.
It's a rolling clip face where he's fallen, we believe, and at the bottom it's about 10 foot deep with lantana, so it's really hard to get access to it.
Jay's father, Kevin, today issued a heartfelt thanks to the emergency services.
Their understanding, their willingness, their sympathy, they've really been a support to the family.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
His case angered and shocked the community. Last month, 26-year-old Nathan Thompson was jailed for 18 months after pleading guilty to killing 9 puppies near Kurri Kurri. Today, supported by his mother, Thompson appealed his sentence in the district court. Lawyer Paul Kiley argued his client had been threatened in jail and had mental health issues, claims rejected by Judge Helen Syme as she dismissed the appeal. Scathing of Thompson, she said his excuse of trying to help a friend dispose of the animals didn't justify the torture or cruelty shown. She also recommended he seek drug treatment when released. Although Judge Syme said she had no plans to meddle with the overall sentence, she said she would have given Thompson longer. She also questioned why action wasn't taken against the man who gave him the pups. Those who've united to stand up for the Kurri Kurri puppies, a group called Time for 9, have prepared a television commercial highlighting the issue of backyard breeding.
We want to stop backyard breeding. I think this is where it's all stemmed from. Our message is getting out there, and I think it's just the community is saying no. We're not going to stand for animal abuse.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
A fourth coal terminal has been slated for this site at Kooragang Island for 5 years. And while the Department of Planning has now ruled the creation of the highly controversial T4 is in the community interest, Port Waratah Coal Services was today making no promises about ever building it.
We'll have to see where the industry goes. Clearly, the current market conditions for the coal industry are very challenging, and it will require a different set of market conditions for the project to be required.
Just remediating the proposed site would cost $100 million, with the coal loader's overall cost estimated at $5 billion. At a time when both production and the coal price are down. Opponents have lobbied against T4, citing air quality, noise and health concerns. The Hunter Community Environment Centre says the Planning Department's recommendation makes no sense.
The community is against this project. The industry doesn't want it. There's no reason for it to go ahead, and yet still it keeps coming back like a zombie before the planning department without any kind of basis in reality.
The project has been given a 10-year approval timeframe, but it still needs to get the green light from the Planning Assessment Commission and be approved under a Commonwealth Act. Madeline McKell, NBN News. United in outrage, these Stockton residents say this building is a blight on the entrance to their suburb.
The way it is at the moment, it's a disgrace to Newcastle. People coming to Newcastle to stay at the caravan park, they must shake their heads and think they're welcome to Baghdad or somewhere. It's blown up buildings.
A protest meeting outside the former Roses Garage service station called on all tiers of government to take action. State MP Tim Crackenthorpe today pledged to take their concerns to the Lands Minister.
The community have asked me to step up, to draw a line in the sand and get the Minister to 1, annul the lease, 2, remediate the land, and 3, put it out to the community as to the best use of that space.
Most protesters want a working service station at the site, saying they currently have to travel to Newcastle or Williamtown to get fuel. And it's easy to see why Stockton residents are so upset. Their once functioning petrol station is now covered with junk, and the building seemingly serves no purpose.
We've had enough. We didn't want to get to this stage. We didn't really want it to have to get confrontational. We hoped that lobbying with council and Crown Land and even the operator himself in the early days would resolve it. But unfortunately, this is where we are today.
While the lights were on, the operator was not available for comment. Madeline McKell, NBN News.
With a bye this weekend, the Knights were trying a new approach to training today.
Bit of competitive spirit coming out in the boys. I think Jake Mamo got the cake today. Mate, it is. It's a nice little change of pace.
But last Saturday's 22-point loss to the Raiders remains fresh in their minds.
Personally, I think it's self-inflicted. Sometimes we're probably trying a bit too hard and just going away from our game plan that we do have in place. So, mate, we've just got to make sure we stick together, stay tight and band together through the hard times, like now.
Corbin Sims has joined the Maroons camp for Origin 2, and it's clear his selection doesn't sit well with his Blues-aligned brother.
From a brother's point of view, mate, I'm happy for him. I'm happy for any of my family members to make a representative team, but it's just disappointing that a kid from Gerringong, New South Wales, is playing for Queensland.
Michael Kane, NBN News. On the football field, Jacob Pepper is capable of surprising anyone, including commentators. No doubt he also raised eyebrows at Jets HQ by signing with Western Sydney despite having a season left on his contract.
Yeah, it was a big decision, but I think for my football career, hopefully it's the right decision, and now it's up to me to make it my right decision.
Pepper says the 2-year deal was hard to pass up after a meeting with Wanderers officials.
Just the culture of the club, you look in the past couple of years what they've done and how they've built the club, so I couldn't really go past it.
Making a fresh start was another factor despite the current overhaul at the Jets.
It made it difficult not knowing who the coach was, but I think FFA will, regardless, will put a good coach in. So it wasn't just the fact of that, it was just I think I need to get out of my comfort zone from here in Newcastle and look forward to a new challenge.
Pepper's favourite pastime is spearfishing, so he's ready to make a splash in Sydney's west.
The Parramatta River, and I want to take a few of the new boys and show them how it's done.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Paul Caslick, a local champion dirt tracker, that's going to have a crack at the Super Moto. But we've lost Troy Bayliss. Troy crashed in America a week ago and broke his ankle.
Back in the UK, we haven't got half as much off-road, it's a bit more tame, but we have to cater for cars and other things like that at the same event, but I'm really looking forward to this.